Good morning, students. Today in this session I will discuss about normal puparium. The word puparium is derived from a Latin word pupera, that means a woman in childbirth. Pure means child and parere means give birth, and the word puparium is derived from this word pupera. Puerperium is a period of approximately 6 weeks which commences following completion of third stage of labor. During this time, the woman recovers from stresses of pregnancy and delivery, and the physiological adaptations which occur during pregnancy subside, and it facilitates the restoration of the non-pregnant state. Now we will see the definition. Here you have to study two terms. One is puerperium and the other one is involution. Puerperium is the period following childbirth during which the body tissues, especially the pelvic organs, revert back approximately to the pre-pregnant state both anatomically and physiologically. This means once the labor process is completed, all the system and the organs involved will revert back to the pre-pregnant state. Its structure as well as functions will revert back to the pre-pregnant state. It reverts back approximately only, not completely. Some of the changes occurred cannot be completely reverted back to the pre-pregnant state. The next term is involution. Involution is the process whereby the reproductive organs return to their non-pregnant state. The duration of puerperium. Puerperium begins as soon as the placenta is expelled and it lasts for approximately 6 weeks. During this time, the uterus becomes regressed almost to the non-pregnant size. The postpartum period has been divided into 3 stages, that is immediate, early and remote. The immediate puerperium, the first 24 hours after delivery, and this period is known as immediate puerperium. This is the time when acute post-anesthetic or post-delivery complications can occur. The second stage is the early puerperium. This is the period which extends until the first week postpartum. The third one is remote puerperium, which includes the period of time required for involution of the genital organs. This is up to 6 weeks after the delivery. Changes occurring in the reproductive system. First one, uterus, involution of the uterus. It is the return of the uterus to a non-pregnant state after childbirth. Involution process begins immediately after expulsion of the placenta with contraction of uterine smooth muscles. At the end of third stage of labor, the uterus is in the midline about 2 cm below the level of the umbilicus, and it weighs about 1000 gram and measures about 20 into 12 into 7.5 cm, that is the length, breadth and thickness. By 24 hours postpartum, the uterus is about the same size it was at 20 weeks of gestation. The fundus descends about 1 to 2 cm every 24 hours, and by the 6th postpartum day it is located halfway between the symphysis pubis and the umbilicus. At the end of the first week it weighs about 500 gram, and by the 6th week it weighs approximately 50 gram. The uterus lies in the true pelvis within 2 weeks after the childbirth. The endometrial lining rapidly regenerates. that will take around 16 days, and the placental site undergoes a series of changes in the postpartum period. Changes occurring in the lower uterine segment. Immediately following delivery, the lower segment becomes thin, flabby, collapsed structure, and it takes a few weeks to revert back to normal shape and size of the isthmus. Cervix. Cervix is soft immediately after birth. It contracts very slowly. The cervix up to the lower uterine segment remains edematous and thin for several days after birth. The cervical os, which is dilated to 10 cm during labor, closes gradually. It may still possible to introduce 2 fingers into cervical os for the first 4 to 6 postpartum days. The external cervical os never regains its pre-pregnancy appearance. It is no longer shaped like pre-pregnant stage. It returns to its normal state at 4 weeks after birth. Physiological consideration. The physiological process of involution is very evident in the body of the uterus. Changes occur in the following components. One is muscles, number 2 blood vessels, and number 3 endometrium. Changes occurring in the muscles. There is marked hypertrophy and hyperplasia of muscle fibers during pregnancy, and the individual muscle fiber enlarges to the extent of 10 times and 5 times of breadth during the pregnancy. During puerperium, the number of muscle fibers is not decreased, but there is substantial reduction of the myometrial cell size. Withdrawal of steroid hormones, that is estrogen and progesterone, may lead to increase in the activity of uterine collagenase and the release of the proteolytic enzyme. Changes occurring in the blood vessels. Myometrial contraction and retraction compress the blood vessels of the uterus and so control the bleeding until the vessels are thrombosed. Within them, new blood vessels grow, and fibroelastic tissue of the old blood vessels degenerate and it is removed by phagocytes. Changes occurring in the endometrium. Following delivery, the major part of the decidua is cast off with expulsion of the placenta and the membranes more at the placental site. The endometrium left behind varies in thickness from 2 to 5 millimeters. The superficial part containing the degenerated decidua, blood cells, and bits of fetal membranes become necrotic and is cast off in the lochia. Regeneration starts by 7th day and it is completed by 10th day. The endometrium is restored by 16th day except at the placental site where it takes about 6 weeks. Placental site involution. Involution of placental site takes place up to 6 weeks. Placental site gets elevated immediately after delivery. It gets irregular, friable, and it is composed of thrombosed vascular sinusoids. These undergo hyalinization. Most of the decidua basalis is shed over a period of weeks and it is replaced by regenerating endometrium. This picture shows the uterine involution during the puerperium. The rate of involution of the uterus can be assessed clinically by noting the height of the fundus of the uterus in relation to the symphysis pubis. Bladder must be emptied before assessment. The uterus is to be centralized, and with a measuring tape the fundal height is measured above the symphysis pubis. Following delivery, the fundus lies about 13.5 cm above the symphysis pubis. During the first 24 hours, the level remains constant. Thereafter, there is a steady decrease in height by 1.25 cm in 24 hours, so that by the end of second week, the uterus becomes a pelvic organ. The rate of involution thereafter slows down until by 6 weeks the uterus becomes almost normal in size.
Involution of the vagina. The distensible vagina noticed soon after birth takes a long time, that is around 6 to 10 weeks, to involute. It regains its tone but never to the virginal state. The mucosa remains delicate for the first few weeks and submucous venous congestion persists even longer. It is the reason to withhold surgery on puerperal vagina. Ragae partially reappears at third week but never to the same degree as in pre-pregnant state. Introitus remains permanently larger than the virginal state. Hymen is lacerated and is represented by nodular tags. Broad ligaments and round ligaments require considerable time to recover from the stretching and laxation. Pelvic floor and pelvic fascia takes a long time to involute from the stretching effect during parturition. Lochia. It is the vaginal discharge that occurs after birth. The discharge originates from the uterine body, cervix and vagina. For the first 2 hours after birth, the amount of lochia is like a heavy menstrual flow. After that, the lochial flow steadily decreases. The order and reaction of lochia. It has got a peculiar offensive fishy smell. Its reaction is alkaline in the beginning and it becomes acidic towards the end. Depending upon the color, the lochia is divided into 3: lochia rubra, lochia serosa and lochia alba. The first one, lochia rubra. It is red in color and occurs between 1 to 4 days. It consists of blood, shreds of fetal membrane and decidua, vernix caseosa, lanugo and meconium. The next type is lochia serosa. It is yellowish pink or pale brownish in color. It occurs between 5 to 9 days. The third one is lochia alba. This is pale white in color. This usually occurs between 10 to 15 days. It contains plenty of decidual cells, leukocytes, mucus, fatty and granular epithelial cells and microorganisms. The average amount of discharge for the first 5 to 6 days is estimated to be 250 ml. The normal duration of lochia may extend up to 3 weeks. The lochia rubra may persist for longer, especially in women with the twins, and lochia will be scanty in premature labor. Lochia can be more when women get up from the bed in the later periods. Now we will see what are all the clinical aspects. Order. Offensive lochia means infection. It may indicate retained bits or cotton pieces inside the vagina. Next one is amount. In case of severe infection with septicemia, lochia is scanty and not offensive. If it is excessive also, it may indicate infection. Next one is color. Persistence of lochia rubra beyond normal limit indicates subinvolution or retained bits of conceptus. What do you mean by subinvolution? When the involution is impaired or when the uterus does not return to its normal size, it is called subinvolution. The next one is duration. The duration of lochia can vary. Sometimes it averages approximately 5 weeks. Now we will discuss about the general physiological changes. Changes occurring in temperature. After the delivery, there may be a slight rise in temperature which comes down to normal within 12 to 24 hours. There may be little rise in temperature on the third day, and this may be due to breast engorgement, and it should not last for more than a day. Genitourinary tract infection should be excluded if there is rise of temperature. Next, about the changes occurring in the pulse rate. Pulse is unstable for few days. Initially, there is tachycardia during labor and delivery. That means the pulse is likely to be raised for few hours after the normal delivery. On the second day, it may get slowed down due to rest and diminished food intake. However, the pulse rate often rises with after pains or excitement. A woman's pulse rate during the postnatal period is usually slightly slower than the normal rate. The increased stroke volume reduces the pulse rate to between 60 to 70 per minute. The blood volume diminishes due to diuresis and it leads to fall in blood pressure, and there will be increase in the pulse rate accordingly. By the end of the first week, the pulse rate will return to normal. Next is about the changes occurring in the blood pressure. Systolic and diastolic blood pressures will be stable during late pregnancy and up to 12 weeks postpartum. After this period, the blood pressure starts to increase. Within 2 weeks postpartum, the systemic vascular resistance increases by 30%. Urinary system. The bladder may be over distended without any desire to pass urine because of the reduced sensitivity to the raised pressure. This is occurring due to the trauma caused to the nerve plexus during the delivery. There can be stagnation of urine, and this will lead to urinary tract infections in the puparium. Dilated ureters and renal pelvis return to normal by 8 weeks. Urinary bladder gradually regains its tone. Changes occurring in the GI system. There is loss of fluid during labor in the lochia, diuresis and perspiration. This leads to increased thirst during the early puparium. Constipation also occur during the puparium due to delayed GI motility and mild ileus occurring after the delivery. Some women may have anal incontinence also. Weight loss. There is around 5 to 6 kg weight loss
due to the delivery of the fetus, placenta, liquor and blood loss. In addition to this, 2 to 3 kilogram further lost during the puerperium, and this is due to diuresis and involution of the uterus. The weight loss may continue up to 6 months of delivery. Fluid loss. There is a total loss of at least 2 liters of fluids during the first week of puerperium. An additional amount of 1.5 liters is lost during the next 5 weeks. The amount of fluid loss depends on the amount of fluid retained during pregnancy, the amount of dehydration occurring during labor, and the amount of blood lost during the delivery process. The amount of fluid loss will be more in women with preeclampsia and eclampsia. Blood values. Because of the fluid loss and blood loss, there will be slight decrease in the blood volume immediately following delivery. Within 2 weeks, the blood volume returns to the normal level, that is to the pre-pregnant level. Cardiac output increases soon after delivery and slowly returns to normal within 1 week. RBC volume and hematocrit values become normal by 8 weeks postpartum. Menstruation and ovulation. The onset of first menstrual period may vary according to the individual difference, and also it depends on the lactation. In non-lactating mothers, that means if the woman does not breastfeed her baby, menstruation returns by 12th week following delivery in 80% of the cases. 7 to 9 weeks is considered as the mean time for the onset of first menstruation after delivery. If the mother is not breastfeeding, the ovulation may start by 4 weeks, and if the mother is lactating, it may start by about 10 weeks after the delivery. Duration of anovulation depends upon the frequency, intensity and duration of the breastfeeding. The reason for anovulation and amenorrhea is due to the elevated levels of serum prolactin, which is associated with suckling. The contraceptive protection for a mother who is exclusively breastfeeding may last up to 6 months postpartum. But in some mothers, ovulation can occur before getting the first period after the delivery. It can be advised to use contraceptive measures after 3 weeks for a non-lactating mother and after 3 months for a lactating mother. Now we will discuss about lactation. As you have studied earlier, the development of breast occurs during pregnancy due to the hormonal influence. There is no further anatomic changes occurring during the early puerperium. For the first few days, there is a creamy yellow secretion from the breast is occurring, and this is called the colostrum. Composition of the colostrum. Colostrum is a deep yellow serous fluid and it is alkaline in reaction. The specific gravity of colostrum is high. It has a high protein, vitamin A, sodium and chloride content. It is a rich source of IgA. It is low in carbohydrate, fat and potassium content. Because of the presence of antibodies, it provides immunity to the newborn. there are large fat globules present in the breast milk, and this provides a laxative effect. This table shows the percentage of composition of colostrum and breast milk. Physiology of lactation. The physiology of lactation depends upon four processes. Number 1, preparation of breast, that is mammogenesis. Number 2, synthesis and secretion from the breast alveoli, that is lactogenesis. Third one is ejection of milk, that is galactokinesis. And the fourth one is maintenance of lactation, that is galactopoiesis. Mammogenesis. Pregnancy is associated with a remarkable growth of both ductal and lobulo-alveolar systems. An intact nerve supply is not essential for the growth of the mammary gland during pregnancy. Lactogenesis. Milk is mainly produced by the alveolar cells. Milk secretion actually starts on the third or fourth postpartum day. Around this time, the breast become engorged, tense, tender and feel warm. There will be high prolactin level during pregnancy, but due to the effect of estrogen and progesterone, breast tissues will become unresponsive to prolactin. These hormones are withdrawn following the delivery, and during this time the secretory activity is initiated by the prolactin. Galactokinesis. This means the ejection of milk. Discharge of the milk from the mammary glands depends on suckling of the baby and contractile system. Oxytocin is the major galactokinetic hormone. During suckling, a conditioned reflex is set up. Movement of milk from the alveoli to the mouth of the infant is an active process within the breast. The milk ejection reflex is initiated by suckling, which stimulate the release of oxytocin from the posterior pituitary. Oxytocin contracts the myoepithelial cells surrounding the alveoli and the lactiferous ducts, thereby aiding expulsion of milk. This is recognized by the mother as milk letdown. This is the milk ejection or milk letdown reflex. Under the influence of oxytocin, the cells surrounding the alveoli contracts, propelling the milk through the ductal system into the infant's mouth. This occurs between 30 to 60 seconds. Draught. It's a sensation of rise of pressure in the breast by milk experienced by the mother at the beginning of sucking, and this is called draught. The milk ejection reflex is inhibited by emotional stress, pain, breast engorgement, and this may explain why maternal anxiety leads to failure of lactation. Galactopoiesis, that is the maintenance of lactation. Prolactin is the single important hormone responsible for galactopoiesis. Continuous suckling is essential to maintain the lactation. It is not only essential for the removal of milk from the glands, but it is also causes the release of prolactin. Milk secretion is a continuous process unless suppressed by congestion or emotional disturbance. Milk pressure reduces the rate of milk production. This is occurring due to retained milk because of the failure of suckling. Milk production. A healthy mother produces around 500 to 800 ml of milk a day, and for this she needs 700 kilocalories per day. This is made up from the mother's diet or from her body store. For this purpose, a store of about 5 kg of fat during pregnancy is made. Stimulation of lactation. For stimulation of lactation, the mother should be motivated about the benefits of lactation. No pre-lacteal feeds like honey, water, etc. to be given to the baby. Following delivery, the important steps to be followed are to put the baby to the breast at 2 to 3 hours interval from the first day, provide plenty of fluids to drink to the mother, encourage early and exclusive breastfeeding to avoid breast engorgement, that is within half an hour to 1 hour. Inadequate milk production or lactation failure. Lactation failure mainly can occur due to infrequent suckling or may be due to some other factors leading to suppression of prolactin. Example, ergot preparations, pyridoxine, diuretics or retained placental bits. Other reasons can lead to lactation failure is pain and anxiety of the mother. Unrestricted feeding at short intervals, that is 2 to 3 hours, is helpful to manage this. Drugs to improve milk production. Metoclopramide helps to increase the prolactin levels and thereby increases the milk volume 60 to 100%. The usual dose given is 10 mg thrice daily. Other medicines are sulfuride and domperidone, which is found to be effective to increase the prolactin levels. Other than that, intranasal oxytocin contracts myoepithelial cells and causes milk letdown. Lactation suppression. Lactation suppression is needed for women who cannot breastfeed for personal or medical reasons. Lactation is suppressed when the baby is born dead or dies in the neonatal period or if breastfeeding is contraindicated. Commonly used methods to suppress lactation are to stop breastfeeding, to avoid pumping or milk expression, to wear breast support, apply ice packs to prevent breast engorgement, administer analgesics to relieve pain, apply a tight compression bandage for 2 to 3 days. Medicines like bromocriptine inhibit the prolactin, but it is not usually advised. The common side effects are hypotension, rebound breast engorgement, seizures, myocardial infarction and puerperal stroke.